October 10th of 1900. OU and Texas square off for the first time. The Texas Longhorns took home the win, 28-2. Since then, we've seen a number of instant classics. The downpour of 1984, a 15-15 tie with a questionable call and a game-tying field goal.
1 for 1 from that distance this year. The snap is high. The kick is up. It is good. And time runs out.
In 1994, the 17-10 Texas win, complete with a goal line stand inside the last minute of the fourth. 2001 saw the infamous blitz and ensuing pick six that led the Sooners to a 14-3 victory. And 2017, when a Heisman hopeful QB threw a beautiful ball to his wide-open tight end downfield to seal the 29-24 OU win.
Wide open, incomplete. Mark Andrews, Baker Mayfield does it.
Fast forward to October 10th, 2020. Exactly 120 years since the rivalry began. Chapter number 116 of the Storybook Rivalry is written. And boy, will we remember this one. Both sides of the scoreboard read 17 at half. As the Sooners looked as though they were pulling away, the Longhorns rallied back. After 60 minutes of football, the two teams were all square. It took 4 overtimes, 2 Ellinger touchdown runs, 2 Rattler touchdown passes, a couple of missed field goals, and a Trey Brown interception. The Sooners pulled out the 53-45 win, the highest scoring game in Red River history. Now, after a week off, Crimson and Cream face the Horned Frogs of TCU. From M&G Carter Stadium on ABC, the Sooners and the TCU Horned Frogs. This is Game Day U.
Down in Fort Worth this morning, it's a battle of the old versus the new. 60-year-old Gary Patterson and the TCU Horned Frogs going up against 37-year-old Lincoln Riley and the Oklahoma Sooners. Meanwhile, up in Stillwater, a battle for Big 12 supremacy, at least for the moment, between Oklahoma State and Iowa State. And oh, just for good measure, Big 10 football returns today as well. The bottom line, there is a slew of storylines across this college football Saturday, and the good news is we're going to break them all down for you here on Game Day U over the next 2 hours. Parker Thune alongside Shannon Earhart and Caroline Grace. Well, folks, we're coming off the bye week, obviously, so haven't been on air in 2 weeks now. Do either of you even want to attempt to make sense of the chaos that we witnessed between Oklahoma and Texas in the Cotton Bowl 2 Saturdays ago?
Chaos is the way to explain it. That 4 overtime game lasted, you said 5 hours, which is absurd. But I'm so happy that OU came out with the win and pulled through, and that battle was really there. We saw them go head to head, and we knew that was going to happen. But who would have known that it would have went 5.5 hours?
Yeah, the only thing I wish I could change would be Texas and Oklahoma being highly ranked. But, you know, you can't have that every year. I think it was a great game, and it's definitely going to go down in history. There was a point in time where I thought I was never going to get to go home, but we ended up out with the win. Thank God. Could you imagine staying there for 5 hours and us not winning?
No
I would have
chance.
not been a happy person after that.
I'll tell you what, just the second overtime contest in the history of the series. And Shannon, as you mentioned, we didn't just get 1 overtime. We got 4 of them. 4 extra periods. It looked for all the world like Oklahoma was going to walk home with the victory in the 3rd overtime. Lo and behold, Gabe Burkich misses
Really
wide
blew
left
it.
on the 31-yard field goal, and we get another extra frame in which Spencer Rattler delivers the winning 25-yard touchdown pass to Drake Stoops. Trey Brown seals it with the interception, and the Sooners go home happy. Here's what the coaches and players had to say in the aftermath of the Sooners' dramatic victory.
Had a very productive bye week. I thought the players handled it very well. Excited about some of the work and being able to keep some of these players on the field and being able to have some continuity and build up some skills and just have some consistency as far as practice goes. So it's been certainly, I think, a positive for our team and the development of all of our players.
Well, there will no doubt be books, likely poems, perhaps a myriad of other literary works eventually written about what was, by many accounts, the most memorable iteration of the Red River Showdown in history. Unfortunately, we can't spend too much time on it because we got plenty of other storylines to get to this morning on Game Day U. But briefly, Shannon, Caroline, I want to know who or what impressed you the most in the Sooners' dramatic victory over Texas?
Okay, Parker, you want to know what impressed me?
Yes, that's what I asked.
The special teams impressed me. They came to play. They showed out, and they really were just huge in this game. Let me remind you, they had a blocked punt, a blocked field goal, and Marvin Mims, you saw his 36-yard punt return. The special teams set the offense up for success, and we saw that big time in this game. They didn't give up big plays, but made big plays, which was key to this OU Texas close game, four overtime game. Super successful. I'm proud of the special teams and that they were very urgent. The urgency was there. They were on their feet and ready to play. They wanted the ball, and we saw that big time. Yes, Gabe Burkich did miss that third quarter field goal, but that was no problem. The special teams bounced back and really pulled through for the Sooners. So shout out special teams. Impressive.
Yeah, I really like that take. I think when you have such an average, mediocre team like OU, it's important for a unit like that to really fill in the gaps and set your offense up for success. And I honestly think that contributed a lot to Spencer Rattler's confidence in that game.
100%. I'd say Spencer Rattler was the leader in this game, and we saw that, but it was also, he was the one that got us the TDs, but it was the special teams that set us up right there in the red zone. So
for sure. Well, speaking about Spencer Rattler's confidence, I think it helped out incredibly that TJ Pledger finally showed up. Now, I know I've called him out the last 2 weeks, and I'm going to own up to that, but he was so unreliable against K-State and Iowa State. I had absolutely no hope for this guy. He had 22 carries for 131 yards, and on the first drive in Dallas, he had a powerful 30-yard run. That's the way you start the game right there. He was dynamic. He had a ton of catch and runs down to the red zone, and he brought the ball into the end zone. And another time out of the end zone, when he was running out, I think it was a 25-yard run. Who knew he was that fast? I had never seen this guy play like he did. And now 22 carries is double the opportunities that he had. But let's put this into perspective just a little bit. So against Iowa State and Kansas State, he carried for, 11 carries and then 13 carries. And he was averaging about 45 yards per game. So against Texas, he had double the carries but triple the yards. So I think he finally showed up to play, and he was that dynamic weapon that Spencer Rattler really needs.
But let me ask you this. Do you think that's partly because Seth McGowan was out because of a concussion for OU Texas, or why do you think that TJ Pledger just all of a sudden decided to show out for this game?
Well, I think that, yes, it is a little startling to look at the stats if you're just looking on paper, but TJ Pledger is scared. He knows that his spot's going to get taken if he doesn't step up. And I would say that it was only because Seth McGowan was out. If he had about the same or double the amount of carries and around 100 yards, but we're talking almost triple the yardage on only double the carries. And I think that in itself is what was the most impressive to me.
First two touchdowns of TJ Pledger's Oklahoma career come in this game. Another guy that scored his first career touchdown in this game was Marcus Major. And that kind of leads right into the guy that impressed me the most in this OU Texas game. That is Austin Stogner, and he's a guy that I've talked about throughout the year and identified as a potential breakout candidate in this Oklahoma offense. I'll tell you what, this guy is not only a physical freak of nature, 6'6", 260 pounds, but he does all the little things right, and you're going to see it right here on Marcus Major's 7-yard touchdown run in the second quarter. Check out Stogner sealing the edge for Major alongside Jeremiah Hall. Oklahoma doubling up with the H-backs there. But I tell you what, I was most impressed with Stogner's 11-yard touchdown catch in the first overtime, which came on a 3rd and 7. Spencer Rattler just tossed up a 50-50 ball. And you know, if you're going to throw one of those, you might as well throw it to the biggest man on the field.
That's true.
And that is Austin Stogner. He came down with it and really salvaged what looked like an ugly situation for the Sooners for the moment, because if that pass falls incomplete, Oklahoma's facing a 4th and 7 with the game already on the line in the very first overtime. And granted, Rattler's pass to Drake Stoops was phenomenal to seal the deal in the 4th overtime, but they don't get to that point without Austin Stogner's fantastic play in that very first overtime.
He played very strong. I was very impressed with him, and we've seen him play strong before. But as you said, there was 2 H-backs there, Hall and Stogner. Fantastic way to play, and he really came in clutch. And I was expecting him to come in clutch. He's really been seen as a leader, so good call out.
Oklahoma's leading receiver through the first 4 games of the
Hands
season.
down the most dynamic player we have, for sure.
Absolutely, and it wasn't just that contribution in the first overtime either. He had another big catch in the second overtime to set up the short yardage touchdown from Spencer Rattler.
Or the first 4 quarters of the game. I mean, he showed up the first 4 and the last 4.
He's kind of a sneaky surprise. I think people underrate him for how good he actually is.
Yeah.
Well, and he was a guy that came into Oklahoma with a lot of hype. He was a 5-star recruit, top tight end in his signing class, but didn't have as much of an impact as I think people would have expected as a true freshman. And on some level, that's due to the wealth of personnel that Oklahoma had on the offensive side of the football last year. And the wealth
Okay,
of
but
weapons
let's
that
break
they
this
had.
down a little bit.
Please.
What 5-star recruits that's come in as true freshmen have truly impressed us in the last 2 years?
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah, I think that they did with Austin Stogner the right thing. And I hope they learn from this. I hope they learn that it's about the process. You can't just bring a 5-star recruit. There's a huge difference between college football and high school football.
Big
and
time.
I mean, this guy's 6'6", and I would have to say, you know, he's probably one of the biggest players in high school football. And now look at how good and big he is on a college football field just by taking a step back his freshman year.
It's getting those reps in for sure. Without the reps, he wouldn't be as good as he is. And I think that was a good idea to just let him kind of sit back. And now it's his time to shine.
Yeah.
So
Wish we would do that with our entire secondary.
You
But
think about arguably the best football player that Oklahoma has had over the last few seasons, Kenneth Murray, 3-star recruit. Think about probably the best football player that Oklahoma has on their roster right now, Creed Humphrey, 3-star recruit. Think about maybe the greatest Sooner of all time, some would argue, Baker Mayfield. Walk on.
That
Not
is
even ranked.
always the process. It's always the lower recruited high school athletes end up being the best college, and then the underrated college athletes end up being the best in the NFL. So it is all about that process, I believe.
And Lincoln Riley has a tremendous recruiting class coming in the class of 2021. Now, I'm curious, where does that set Oklahoma up as you think about their long-term potential in the Big 12, given that Texas has managed to out-recruit Oklahoma virtually every single year and can't do as much with more in terms of recruiting than Oklahoma? Do you think that's a significant advantage that Lincoln Riley has over the competition?
Yes, but I also think that within the next 2 years, we're going to see a lot of schedule changes for Oklahoma. I think some of our non-conference games are about to step up just a little bit, and I think it's going to be more about our big wins than so much of who we have on the field, because to be quite honest, I think we have about 2 or 3 more years before we're going to have a clean slate. We're going to have all of Alex Grinch's defense. We're going to have all of Lincoln Riley's offensive schemes. So,
yeah, I mean, I agree with you 100%. I also think it's about the way that Lincoln Riley utilizes those new recruits versus how Texas is going to use them. I do think that he has a leg up for sure, but it depends. I'm excited to see how it pans out next year.
Last thing before we take a quick break here, but Texas obviously already has 2 conference losses, the loss to OU being the most recent of those. They'd previously lost to the Horned Frogs as well. And we'll get into this a little bit more in the next segment. But you think Texas can climb back into the picture in terms of making the Big 12 championship, or are their hopes shot?
I think they're about just as shot as OU's are. I don't think that they're going to be able to come back into the Big 12 picture. I also don't think that OU is going to get back into the Big 12 picture, but I'll talk about that later. That's a good question.
I'm with you, Shannon. I definitely think that Texas and OU are just about down for the count as anyone else is. But the only thing OU has going for them is they have a head-to-head against OSU. That might save them. but I don't think anything can save Texas.
If they can pull out the win.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know.
One thing is for certain, it's starting to look like Tom Herman's days in Austin are numbered. So we'll see
Yeah,
if
you
change
say
is on
that
the way
every year.
for the Texas Longhorns. Well, coming up next, right here on Game Day U, we will discuss our predictions for the Big 12 title. Stay with us. There's more to come. Still ahead, Abby Bennett and our Game Day U studio team will discuss whether Clemson quarterback Trevor Lawrence has already wrapped up the Heisman Trophy. It feels weird that we're already having that conversation just 4 games into the season, but he's playing as well as anybody in recent memory. But for right now, Parker Thune alongside Shannon Earhart and Caroline Grace, keeping things Big 12 centric for the moment. Now let's dive in, y'all, and Kansas State has jumped out to a very impressive 3-1 start. Undefeated in Big 12 play after the season opening loss to Arkansas State. That includes a victory over Oklahoma and a victory over TCU. However, the news this week is that Kansas State senior quarterback Skylar Thompson is out for the season. So not only do the Wildcats have to account for the loss of Joshua Youngblood, their dynamic return man and offensive weapon, to the transfer portal, but they're now also dealing with the loss of their starting quarterback in Manhattan. What does this injury mean for Kansas State's chances of winning the Big 12? What does it mean for the program going forward?
This is what's going to happen here with Kansas State. Their speed of play is going to slow down tremendously. I'm telling you, with Will Howard, who is a freshman, a redshirt freshman, coming into Skylar Thompson's spot, into that leader role, the speed of play will slow down. He's not used to this fast speed of play, and I do expect him to panic in the pocket in the first couple of games. We saw against TCU that his pass game just isn't that strong. I don't think that he'll be able to recognize the defenses either. He's used to a defense that runs the same coverages over and over and over again. So what he has to do is get comfortable and not overthink each play, but that will take some time, I can guarantee it. The main factor, though, that Will Howard will be dealing with is trust. He needs to be able to trust his players, and his players need to be able to trust him. He's going to have a quick release on the ball. Otherwise, it's just going to be a slow down game. I hope eventually that he'll be able to pick it up a notch, but I think for now that we're going to take some time, or they're going to take some time to ramp up to that speed of play that they were at before.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and it's, for me, that's more of a this could happen, but this is what will happen, because I've said this a million times and I will say it a million times more. Kansas State is a jack of all trades kind of team, master of none. They execute plays with cleanliness, and to be quite honest, their strongest unit is their running game, and it doesn't take a Heisman contender to get that done. So let's look at some of this footage right now. We're going to open up with a blocked punt. They have done this in every game so far, and their special teams is ranked 2nd nationally in efficiency according to ESPN. Now here are some highlights from when their second string came in. It's easy, just hand the ball off to the Deuces. Deuce Vaughn is one of 3 players in the country to have 200+ yards in rushing and receiving. So when you have a running back that's that explosive, that powerful, and that dynamic, I don't think it really matters who's at quarterback, but I've seen an arm on him. He has had 290 yards in only a game and a half. And Vaughn is the only player in the Big 12 to lead his team in both rushing and receiving yards. So I don't think it's going to take some magician at quarterback to keep this offense efficient.
Hey, I never said magician, but you cannot win football games with only a run game. You need to be able to have a pass game. And he even said himself that his pass game isn't strong, and he knows that. So I'm sure he'll work on that.
In the Big 12, it's all about fast tempo. No secondaries can really cover the deep ball anyway, so I don't think they're worried about it. I don't think anyone's linebacker unit, I don't think anyone's defensive line unit is good enough to stop K-State's offensive front at all. I don't think anyone left on their schedule is going to be able to adjust to whatever they've been doing in the past that Will Howard can come in and do just as easily as Skylar Thompson did.
I do not agree with you at all. Skylar Thompson was phenomenal. He beat us on his own, basically. I don't think Will
so at all.
Howard is
Deuce
going to be
Vaughn
able to
beat us.
I
It
don't
is
think
not
Will Howard
Skylar
is going to be
Thompson.
able to come out and play like Skylar Thompson did. He needs to change something else, especially being a redshirt freshman. He's played one game. The only game he played was TCU.
And what did you see against TCU that made you so scared of how he's going to play the rest of the season? Because there's not one thing that I saw wrong with him that I was like, wow, he's a freshman quarterback. He's not going to be able to get this done.
He doesn't pass the ball.
Oh, and was that a problem?
A little bit. I mean, they did win.
Tends to be a
Kansas
problem at the
State did
quarterback
win,
position.
Okay,
Yeah,
but
it
did they
does
win or
tend to
did
be a
they lose?
problem.
Did they win or did they lose? Are
They
they not
won.
undefeated in
No.
the Big 12?
They are.
It wasn't
Credit to
pretty.
them.
It was not pretty.
Here's what's
Who do they have left on their schedule that's going to be a threat? What defense do they have left on their schedule?
I tell you what, because of the state of that Kansas State offense without Skylar Thompson at the helm, I think once they play Kansas, I don't know if Kansas State wins another game in Big 12 play.
No,
I
that's
back you up
just
on that.
completely false. I'm sorry, but their head coach is smart enough to execute whatever Will Howard is going to be good at. It is not the quarterback that's been winning them games. It is their running backs. Their rush game is unstoppable.
But
And
where's
we're
the
about to see
passing?
that for the rest of the season.
You know what's jarring to think about? Oklahoma lost to Kansas State. Kansas State lost to Arkansas State. Arkansas State lost to Coastal Carolina, rather. So, syllogistically, Coastal Carolina is the best team in the Big 12.
Well, if we're really going on that
It's
end,
rough to
let's
look
just
at.
go ahead and say that every team in the Big 12 is just terrible. So we're just playing with the who's the best out of all the bad. That's all we're playing
OSU,
with.
unfortunately.
It
Hate
will
to
be-
say it.
It will be a war
Well,
of attrition.
So
that is
y'all
for
should
sure.
be on my Kansas State train because who wants Oklahoma State to win? No one.
Hey, I'm not biased.
So, come on.
Here's what I will say. I am very much on the Kansas State train looking towards the future. Come 2021, I think Kansas State can very much contend in the Big 12 and be right up there alongside Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Texas, playing with the big boys, because I think Chris Kleiman is a fantastic coach, and I think Skylar Thompson is going to be back, and he's going to be better than ever, in my opinion. I do believe that there is a lot of promise for that program in Manhattan, and it starts right at the top with Chris Kleiman, who I believe is one of the most brilliant minds in college football. However, for right now, right here in 2020, not having Skylar Thompson at the helm, that does not bode well for the Wildcats' chances looking forward. And I don't want to completely reiterate everything Shannon said about Will Howard, but here's the deal. Thompson is the one that catalyzes that offense. He's very much what Sam Ehlinger is to Texas, what Max Duggan is to TCU. They're just not the same without him.
You don't think that someone else can come be mediocre like Sam Ehlinger and the offense is just going to completely change?
Not right now. I don't think right now.
Exactly.
No. No, I'm saying that not right now. He can't be a Sam Ehlinger because he doesn't throw the ball.
That's what I'm trying to explain, is that Sam Ehlinger is mediocre. Skylar Thompson, was he a Heisman frontrunner? Was he the best quarterback in the Big 12?
I thought you were talking about Will Howard here. Will
I
Howard
am.
is
So
below mediocre.
you take out Skylar Thompson, you take out Sam Ehlinger, you take out anyone other than these offenses like Oklahoma where your quarterback is your team, and you stick someone in that knows just a little bit about football, is good enough to be on the team, they're going to execute just as well as the previous guy. I don't think that Skylar Thompson had anything really to do with all of the success that they're having. Yes, he's a leader. Yes, he executes, but there's nothing else I can say about him. He wasn't just some dynamic, like, end-all, be-all player.
All right, well, we've name-dropped like 6 quarterbacks on this segment, and I don't even know which one we're talking about anymore. So we're going to move on. Let's kick things up to Stillwater. How dangerous, folks, is this Oklahoma State team? Started 3-0, obviously had their last game against Baylor postponed. So they're sitting there right now, the only undefeated team left in the Big 12. And I feel like this is a team that we've talked about just about every week, and we're going to continue to talk about it, at least until that Bedlam matchup with Oklahoma. How dangerous are they?
I don't think they're that dangerous, but they're also kind of dangerous. I'm kind of in a half and half point. I'm kind of in the middle. They do play their first ranked team, Iowa State, this weekend, and they're coming off a 2-week bye, but that does mean that they got extra reps. But what I have to say about OSU is that everything sits on the shoulders of the defense. The defense plays recklessly, and we've seen strong defensive playing on all 3 levels. We can see how they are going to match up against ISU's tight ends, Charlie Kohler, Chase Allen. So we're going to have to see how that plays out. But if the defense for OSU can continue to contain, they will be dangerous. And I mark my words, I 100% stand by that. But if they don't, I think everything's going to hit the fan. It's not going to look good at all. But yeah, I would have to say that the defense carries the team and that they're kind of dangerous, kind of not. It's also Mike Gundy is dealing with that battle between Spencer Sanders and Shane Illingworth now that Sanders is back. So that should be interesting to see who he decides to play, what should be the best decision, and that he's not going to play favorites, that he really just plays who he wants. And mainly, my main point is that the defense needs to stand up for themselves, and if they do and they play well, OSU will be dangerous.
Yes, I think that's a very good point. It's kind of, if they do this correctly and continue, they're going to be dangerous. But have they really had a test yet? And that's kind of where I'm scared. So I'm going to go with that they are very dangerous because they're averaging double or triple the score against their opponents and double just about every single statistic on the field. Now, granted, it was Tulsa and West Virginia and Kansas, and by no means is that those miraculous football teams, but they're winning by a huge margin, or they won by a huge margin against Kansas, and I kind of think that has something to say for itself. I think their defense is showing a little more strength in their colleagues in the conference, and they're able to shut down the quarterback pretty fast. Now, we know in the Big 12 that if quarterbacks get shut down fast without handing the ball off, it's game over. Then we can't forget, they still have Chuba Hubbard, and he's one of the best running backs in the country, but the Big 12 has an issue with shutting down high-tempo offenses, and they've had 3 solid weeks to improve. So here is the catch. They're about to head into Iowa State, Texas, K-State, and OU all in a row.
Tough kick.
That is a tough kick. But unlike all these other teams who are getting beaten week 1 and 2, they're going to have a lot of confidence, especially if they come out of Iowa State with a win. And let me tell you, if they come out of Iowa State with a win, it's going to be dangerous because they're going to finally realize what clicks. And I think the only loss they have is going to be K-State, and then they're going to see them again later.
I tell you what, that Tulsa win doesn't look half bad now either.
I know.
Golden Hurricane knocking on the door of the AP Top 25.
I know.
So
I agree.
we all gave the Pokes
spoke too soon.
We all gave them some flack for that Week 1 performance, but hey, it turns out Tulsa is not a bad football team at all. Now, I'll say essentially exactly what I said 2 weeks ago on this show leading up to OU Texas, which is, hey, as long as Oklahoma State's rolling with Shane Illingworth at the quarterback position, the best true freshman in the nation, they're going to be just fine. And I think they're a Big 12 title contender.
Freshmen.
Oh, I love Shane Illingworth.
He's been in love with
since
Shane
day
Illingworth
one.
since the beginning.
It's a bromance.
Let me
We've
remember.
discovered this is a bromance.
It very much is. But no, here's the thing. I think here's where I kind of fall off the rails though. There is no coach in college football that I trust more to screw up a perfect situation than Mike Gundy.
Agreed.
If it makes sense to roll with Shane Illingworth at quarterback, make no mistake, Mike Gundy will switch back to Spencer Sanders and his team will suffer.
Yeah.
Now, as long as Illingworth is behind center, airing it out to Tylan Wallace, handing it off to Chuba Hubbard, I think you really got to watch out for this Oklahoma State team. You get Spencer Sanders back in the mix, they regress to the mean. But right now, you got to ride the hot hand if you're Mike Gundy, and that is Shane Illingworth, the best true freshman in the nation.
I will also back you up on that. I could not Shane Illingworth. He's really good, yes, but I know that Mike Gundy is going to drop the ball. I can see it. I can see it happening. It's happened time and time again.
And which of these games are we playing away? Are we? Whoa, let me back myself up there. How many games are Oklahoma State playing away from Boone Pickens?
Did you just refer to Oklahoma State as we?
I
didn't
know
like
where
that.
that came
I
from.
didn't
I'm
like
that. Is that a
so
Freudian
sorry.
slip?
I'm publicly apologizing
We're
for that.
wearing red.
I know. I'm sorry.
All right, that leads into our next discussion. Who makes the Big 12 championship? You got to pick 2 teams. Shannon, go.
OSU versus ISU, the game that we were just talking about. This will be the Big 12 championship. Mark my words. They have the best running back, as you said earlier, Caroline Chuba Hubbard, best in the Big 12. They also have a bench that runs deep. They got L.D. Brown and Tylan Wallace, who is a starter, yes, a receiver who has speed, control, and aggressiveness. He's a triple threat, hands down. I talked about this before, but the defense runs deep for OSU. Let's switch to the other side. ISU, they are riding high on momentum. They've won the past 3 games. First game was just a warm-up. No worries, we'll forget about that against Louisiana State. But Breece Hall Breece Hall is phenomenal. He's able to see the field and take off. He's got that big picture in his mind, and that's also thanks to a great O-line. What I have to say here is that both teams also have an absurd amount of seniors. ISU 16 seniors and OSU with 22. I'm telling you guys, this game, this weekend, will be the Big 12 championship.
So that means one of those teams has to lose to K-State down the road.
Maybe it's not K-State, maybe it's someone else.
Okay, true.
I'm just hearing you sing Oklahoma State's praises now, and I love it. Don't mind that at all.
Oh,
what do you think,
got on
Caroline?
me for saying we, but that's okay. With all of the information that I stated previously, this is a no-brainer for me. It is the Wildcats versus the Cowboys. Freshman quarterback Will Howard, as much as you guys want to talk down on him, will continue to pick up exactly where Skylar Thompson left off. The only ranked team left on their schedule is Iowa State. So, but they're going to run over everyone left, including Baylor and Texas. And as for Oklahoma State, I think they squeezed by the win against Iowa State this weekend. And I don't mean that in they're going to look bad. I just think both teams going into this game know that this is a fight to the death and that Oklahoma State's going to come out on top. But I hate it just as much as everyone else to not see OU in Jerry's World in the Big 12 championship, but I just don't think it's in the cards anymore. The only game, however, that does concern me with OSU is OU. What happens if OSU loses? What happens if if OU beats Oklahoma State?
It's all a toss-up.
It is, and honestly, I like this. I like that it's getting more interesting, and I know we've been talking bad about the Big 12 as a whole being bad, but maybe this is the year that we start to progress into the Big 12 being good. It's just taking all these toss-ups in order for that to happen.
And there will be toss-ups the entire remainder of the season. I do think the Big 12 is going to cannibalize itself. And as I look ahead to the Big 12 championship, and am I the only one that still has some faith in the Sooners? I think they can make a run. I really do. And I think when you start to get into a war of attrition like the Big 12 has become, you have to trust the team that's been there before, and that's Oklahoma right now. I do think that Oklahoma will finish the regular season with 3 losses, but I also think the Big 12 is going to beat itself up enough that that's going to be enough to get Oklahoma into the Big 12 championship. Now, as far as the team that they're going to face off with, I like Iowa State for this reason, and this reason only. They can run the ball, which no one else in the Big 12 can, save for Oklahoma State a little bit.
K-State, you're trying to tell me that K-State cannot run the ball. In fact, they did it against OU once, and so did Iowa State, but K-State did it better.
Iowa State has the best run game in the Big 12 and the best running back in the Big 12 in Breece Hall, and that's why.
What about Charlie Kohler? That
At
wide
tight end?
receiver out there. Oh, yeah. But tight end, wide receiver, same thing. Whatever. But he can pass, run, and block.
Sorry, we're
I tell
getting
you what,
confused with Austin
I
Stogner.
trust Iowa State
Austin
more than
Stogner.
I trust Iowa State more than any team in the Big 12 right now. I actually think they're going to win out. I think they're going to finish the regular season 9-1 and roll into the Big 12 championship
Okay,
with
well,
a lot of momentum.
If that happens, I'll scream Roll Tide at the top of my lungs.
Challenge accepted. All right, we'll be back in just a moment here on Game Day. You will kick it back down to Abby Bennett and our studio crew. Stay with us. Back in a moment.
Welcome back to Game Day U, the one and only student-produced pregame show at the University of Oklahoma. I'm Abby Bennett, and I'm here joined in the studio by Ben Thomas and Saul Mayer. How are y'all feeling this morning?
Doing pretty good. It's football. It's football Saturday. Let's get right to it.
Day.
Yes, that's what I like to hear. All right, before we jump into some of the biggest questions facing college football today, let's send it to Dylan Rivera with the top 5 plays.
Thanks, Abby. We begin with a big man INT. Jayhawks and the Mountaineers. The ball gets deflected up into the air, and 285-pound Darius Stills lays out for the interception. That's enough weight to register a minor earthquake. Watch it one more time. Ball's up. Stills tracks it down and soars in like Superman. West Virginia went on to win 38-17. Georgia State, Arkansas State. Quarterback Lane Hatcher fires a long ball to the goal line, and Jonathan Adams makes the contested over-the-shoulder catch and still finds a way to get across the goal line. No celebration. He does this on the regular. Defense draped all over him, and he still finds the ball, brings it in, and finds pay dirt. The Red Wolves get the high-scoring 59-52 win. Picking on the Peach State again, Georgia and Alabama. Mac Jones finds Devontae Smith in one-on-one coverage in the back of the end zone, and you know what that means. Touchdown, Bama. Smith is absolutely blanketed by the defender, but it doesn't matter. He gets up, gets the catch, gets a foot down, and gets 6 points. Cougar versus Cougar. BYU and Houston. Keep your eyes on the ball. Quarterback Zach Wilson flips it quickly to tight end Mason Wake, and he'll make his way into the end zone. Let's slow it down a bit for you so you can see just how nonchalant Wilson is about this pass. Rolls out right and with a simple flick of the wrist, makes the touchdown pass. Ole Miss at Arkansas. Felipe Franks lets it zip out to the corner of the end zone, and Burks with one hand reels the ball in and gets his foot down. Watch closely as he just gets his hand on the nose of the ball to make this catch. The Hogs get the win, and Traylon Burks gets the top play from Week 7. Ben, Saul, Abby, back to you.
Thank you, Dylan. Now we're about halfway through the season, and we've seen plenty of heroes arise. Which college football player rose to the occasion last week? Ben, we'll start with you.
My pick for last week is Hudson Clark, defensive back from Arkansas. Now, he had a career game, 3 total interceptions, 5 total tackles in the win over Ole Miss. Not only did he lead the way for his defense, the Arkansas defense as a whole had 6 total interceptions, 11 TFLs, 2 pick sixes. Hudson Clark in that defense had Matt Corral and Lane Kiffin guessing the entire game, had no idea what to do against this defense. The defense also then allowed their offense to have 24 points off of those turnovers. Defense really helping out the offense there. And Arkansas is now proving that they are getting a couple wins in the SEC. They didn't have any wins for the longest time. Now they have 2. Maybe Arkansas is on the rise, a force to be reckoned with. But Hudson Clark, congrats to you, man. Career day, 3 picks. That's just, you don't see that too often right there.
Yeah, Arkansas, 2-2. I had them going winless this year. You know, they were one bad call away from being 3-1 and beating Auburn that week in a good defense. I'm actually going to go with offense. I have Brady White as my hero, quarterback out of Memphis. He had a fantastic QB battle with UCF Dylan Gabriel. Brady White had 486 yards and 7 total TDs with no picks, going against Dylan Gabriel's 601 yards and 6 total TDs with no picks. But Brady White got the last laugh and the win. His last drive went for 85 yards in 1:30 in the last 3 minutes of the game. Memphis beats UCF 50-49 and is 2-1 on the year. Truly a historic performance.
All right. Well, my hero is going to be Zach Wilson from BYU. This junior quarterback, they had an outstanding win against Houston last week. This junior quarterback threw for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns against Houston. That required a second half comeback, being down 26-14. His favorite target, Dax Milne, the first play of the game was a 78-yard touchdown, which was super impressive. Now Wilson is 107 out of 136 passing yards with a total of 1,641 yards, 12 touchdowns and 1 interception in just 5 games. Now for BYU, I think the rest of their season they have some pretty easy matchups, but I think this Houston one was crucial, and I think the Wilson hype train is definitely building up some steam.
Yeah, definitely that 12-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio is really impressive. You don't really see that even from like big name quarterbacks in college football. So props to him so far through 5 games, but I will say that strength of schedule, a little shaky there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I'm liking the Zach Wilson hype train. You know, the Jordan headband. This kid's got style.
Yeah. All right, now along the same lines, we've seen some players really fail to show up for their squad. Who are y'all's zeros for this week, Ben?
My zeros this week was a quarterback that just did not show up when he needed to, and that is Stetson Bennett from Georgia. You are the number 3 team in the nation going up against Alabama, one of your biggest rivals, and he did not ball out. He went 18 for 40, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and his QBR rating was 58.5. That is just really bad if you don't know QBR. I mean, he's playing a Bama team that can get on you and attack the quarterback really fast. His first drive, trying to put up points, bobbles the snap, and just throws it right to a Bama player. Interception, Bama ends up going down and scoring to start off the game. not a good way to start it off. And even though that Bama defense is good, they had the capabilities of giving up points. So he had the chance to ball out and really make a statement win against Bama. And he honestly just didn't show up, even when they were leading at times. He had a few flashes, but he just didn't really show up in a game when he needed it, and Georgia really needed their quarterback to come out and be ready to play against a tough Bama D, and he just did not produce.
Yeah, I'm all about that. I don't think Stetson Bennett is that good of a quarterback. He definitely didn't show up last week. When are we going to see JT Daniels come in?
Yeah, I was thinking JT Daniels was going to come in at some point during that game. I was really surprised he didn't because just his stats were not looking too hot.
It's time to give him a chance. You know, he's a good quarterback. My zero of the week, Jarrett Guarantano, Tennessee quarterback. He showed up against Kentucky and played terrible. He was 14 of 21, 88 yards, no touchdowns, and 3 picks. 2 of those were for 6. He helped the Kentucky Wildcats score more for Kentucky than with Tennessee. And that's just not good. He was playing for the wrong team. You know, he was benched for JT Strout in the second quarter, and JT Strout threw a pick. You have this guy coming in and throwing a pick and then saying, okay, well, maybe we'll put Guarantano back in. Guarantano then throws another pick. It was just a horrible showing out for Tennessee, and that was led by the horrible performance of Jarrett Guarantano.
Well, my zero of the week is going to have to go to Bo Nix. Now, last week, they needed this win against South Carolina, but Bo Nix threw for 3 interceptions, and this was their first, actually, despite throwing for 272 yards, which is his new career high on the road, this still cost the game. I mean, y'all, Auburn, they are expected to win these kind of games, and I think, honestly, that is quite embarrassing for Bo Nix. But yeah, no, South Carolina won. They came out with the win 30-22, and this was their first win against Auburn all the way back to 1933. So I think that Bo Nix really needs to prep for the game against Bama. Like I said, I think this win just was honestly kind of embarrassing, and I think they need to grow that momentum and really prep for the games for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think Bo Nix is really having a definition of a sophomore slump. I mean, he had a great freshman year. That Iron Bowl win was phenomenal, and he had a lot of expectations coming into this year, and I think the pressure of that is just kind of getting to him. He just needs to kind of settle down, get back to his game, and he just needs to start being more consistent, especially with Bama on the schedule coming up real soon.
Yeah, I have always been a believer in Bo Nix. I kept up with him with the Elite 11, same class as Spencer Rattler, our QB. He was a runner-up to Spencer, actually, in that. And since then, I was like, you know, Bo Nix is going to do well in the SEC. And he just really hasn't done that. Aside from the Iron Bowl his freshman year, you know, I've always been a big believer in him. He's just let me down, and I'm starting to get tired of him letting me down.
I'm going to have to agree with y'all on that. Now, we all know what Trevor Lawrence is in running for the Heisman Trophy, but is it his just yet?
No, see, I don't think so. I think you still got to talk about those boys down in Bama. Not only Najee Harris at running back, but also Mac Jones at quarterback. But let me start with Najee Harris real fast. This man had 206 total yards and 5 touchdowns against Ole Miss 2 weeks ago. And then last week against the number 3 team in the nation and a tough Georgia defense, puts up 152 yards and 1 touchdown against them. He was running all over the field. This man is 6'2", 230, power running back out of that backfield. Nobody can stop him. Plus he can catch, and when he gets in open space, that man can run. And then also right next to him in the pocket there is Mac Jones. That man had 1,500 yards, 12 touchdowns, 2 picks through the season so far. And against Georgia, was 4 of 5 with 202 yards and 2 scores on passes 30-plus yards downfield or more. This man can just drop it in to those talented wide receivers, and he has been a difference maker on that offensive side of the ball. I really think you need a strong quarterback in the SEC, and I think Mac Jones, while he's not as flashy as a Tua or Jalen, that man can ball, and Najee Harris definitely helps him out as well. So I wouldn't say it's a lock, because the boys down in T-Town, those guys are running the show right now.
I think I'm going to have to strongly disagree with you. I think, Saul, you're on the same boat as I am. What do you think?
You know, I think Mac Jones is good, not great. He's got the weapons, you know. He's got the weapons to be a good quarterback, so there's definitely, you know, no excuse on why he can't be. But I like your Najee Harris pick, actually. Not as the Heisman winner, but I do think Najee Harris is a good runner-up. I think he's the best or maybe second best running back in the country, but he has really been just a bulldozer on that defense. But with Trevor Lawrence, yeah, I think Trevor Lawrence is a Heisman pick. He's had a great year. Oh, let's talk about last game when it's his quote-unquote worst game he's had in a while because he had a pick. Yeah, that game, he went 24 of 32, 404 yards and 5 TDs, and they were up 52-7 at the half. He did all those numbers in one half. And that was his first interception that he threw since October 19th, 2019, over a year ago. On the year, he's got 1,544 yards, 15 TDs, and the one pick that you see there. But I just think it was a good game. And Trevor Lawrence only has one loss in his college career, and that's the national championship game against LSU last year. That's it. I think, and this might be a hot take, if Trevor Lawrence wins the Heisman this year, which I think he will, and the national championship, which I think he will, he can make a very good case to be considered the greatest college athlete of all time.
That's a big take. That's a big take.
Well, Saul, yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you. Considering that last game was his bad game for only one pick, I think that's kind of insane. I think he had a great game. Like you said, Trevor Lawrence he had 5 touchdowns, scored 73 points, and had 404 yards all in the first half, like you said. He, I think, is a great quarterback. He started 2018 as a freshman and helped Clemson go 15-0 and led the team to a national title for the first time since 1985. I think that Trevor Lawrence will definitely keep this winning streak up with high scores. Clemson still has to play Notre Dame, but I think that'll still be a pretty easy win for them, and I think they'll definitely go undefeated. If he just keeps up his style of play and keeps putting up those points, I think the Heisman is definitely his. All right, now we're going to take a time out, but when we return, we'll buy or sell the hype around some of the top-ranked teams in college football. Stick around.
You see them at every game. You know their sound. In just a year after the historic event,
oh my goodness, whoa.
Sooner Spirit is back on their feet. But new complications like a global pandemic have arisen.
I'm expecting the worst, hoping for the best, because I feel like that's all you can really do in today's situations. But
now masks on and 6 feet apart, OU Spirit still finds a way to work around their problems.
We're rehearsing about half as much as we did in previous years. Whereas before it was like 10 to 12 hours a week, it's now like 4 to 8 hours a week, maybe, depending on if you have a game or not.
The Pride of Oklahoma does pre-recorded halftime shows. Palm dances in the stands. But the show will go on.
And it's almost as if like we aren't in the middle of a pandemic whenever we show up at rehearsal, because everybody's just attitude is so great. And so it's really nice to be a part of that still, because that's a really big boost of positivity in a really negative time, you know?
OU Spirit is on the road to Amon G. Carter Stadium for the OU-TCU showdown. Reporting Lindsey Gibbs, Game Day U.
Thank you, Lindsay, and welcome back to the Gaylord Hall studios. It's time for 3 and Out, where we answer 3 pressing questions from the college football world. But this week, we're going to have a little fun with it. I'll say a school, and I want to know if you think we should be buying or selling the hype. Ben, what do you think of BYU? Are you buying or selling?
I'm selling the hype. I've never been a big fan of BYU, and honestly, it's because they have a pretty weak schedule. They have wins over Navy, Troy, Houston, Louisiana Tech, and they're playing Texas State today. Not really anything crazy. The one tough game that was on their schedule so far was Army, and that was postponed. So they didn't really get to face a really tough team like Army running that triple option. But Zach Wilson has been balling out. Like we mentioned earlier, the 12-to-1 touchdown interception ratio, over 1,600 yards. I mean, he's been putting up Heisman numbers, but the competition really hasn't been there. And for the rest of their schedule, doesn't look very promising. Western Kentucky, Boise State, San Diego State, those aren't names that are really jumping out of the pages. So BYU, I mean, they could finish the year undefeated, but I really don't see them being anywhere near close to a college football playoff berth. I think they would just, I think they'd get blown out by a Clemson, Bama, Ohio State.
Yeah, I'm gonna bounce right off you on that one and agree. I am selling BYU exactly for the same reason he is. Strength of schedule. They aren't playing anyone good at all. I'm from Texas, so I would know that Texas State football is the laughingstock of the state of Texas when it comes to football. And BYU having a win over them is nothing, not impressive at all. They look good against non-Power 5 teams, and they look like a decent non-Power 5 team, but I really don't think they can hang with Bama or Clemson. Bama and Clemson would blow them out. Ohio State, too. There are a lot of teams. Heck, I think even OU could beat this team. You know, Zach Wilson looks okay. He's just unproven against good teams. Maybe we'll see it later on, maybe not. I'm just not buying the hype.
Well, I am disagreeing with both of y'all. I'm going to buy BYU. Going back to what I said about Zach Wilson, I think he played an outstanding game against Houston, which was a great win for the team. Obviously, I think BYU is going to win their conference. Ben, like you said, the tougher teams, you got Bama, Clemson, maybe even Auburn, could be a difficult matchup, but I think they can compete, putting up their numbers, high scores. I just think that they need crucial, high-scoring games to keep the momentum going, moving on this season. But, yeah, like I said, I'm going to buy BYU.
I think Zach Wilson's obviously the difference maker there.
I agree.
Can he continue to put up the numbers and put up the stats that he's been putting up so far this year? That will be kind of the telling of is BYU legit or not, because I mean, any team can beat Texas State. I mean, any team.
Yeah. I agree with you all.
Can they consistently do it and be dominant consistently the entirety of the year?
I think they can.
I think Zach Wilson's playmaking is what really sets him apart and makes BYU a make-or-break team. But I have BYU at best a top 20 team.
We'll see about that. All right. Now, what do you guys think about the Aggies of Texas A&M, Ben? Are you buying or selling?
I'm selling again. To me, I mean, Jimbo Fisher has done a great job recruiting. He has the number 4 class in 2019, number 6 class in 2020, a top 20 recruiting class since 2017. You would think that it would pay off on the field, and so far it's looking like it is. But to me, them losing to Bama 52-24 is how I see Texas A&M as a team that can compete in the SEC, could probably win a bowl game against like some other Power 5 conference team. But I don't see them competing for a national title. I don't see competing for a college football playoff berth. And I don't even see them competing for an SEC championship, honestly. I mean, you're in a tough division with Bama. That's always going to be tough. And then Auburn in there too. Tennessee. I mean, A&M's having a solid start, but I feel like they're just going to fall off the train like they always do.
This is not a thumbs up that I'm agreeing with you. This is a thumbs up because I'm saying gig 'em. I am buying the Texas A&M hype. I love the Aggies, and they can make a serious run at an SEC title game. I don't think they can win it, but I do think they can make the game, which would be a huge win for them. I think this is a top 10 team. I don't think it's a top 5 team. I don't think this is a playoff team, but it's 100% an SEC title contending team. They looked good against Florida. They looked okay against Bama, but it's Bama. Their only loss is Bama, and they're 3-1. They've looked really good at home. They're undefeated at home. That huge win that they had at Kyle Field against Florida made me a believer, and I am 100% buying this hype. I love the Aggies. Gig 'em.
Yes, gig 'em, gig 'em. Well, yeah, I'm kind of with you. I think I'm a little up in the air for Texas A&M, but like you said, that win against Florida, that was a great win. Their record being 3-1, I think they could keep this momentum going and have some high-scoring games this season. Like I said, strong team after defeating Florida. And their quarterback, Kellen Mond, I think he's a great quarterback for this team. And he could become the Aggies' all-time leader in passing touchdowns, which I think is great. They have big defensive linemen up front, which gives the Aggies a great run-stopping team. But yeah, like I said, I think A&M, after this great win against Florida, they could keep this momentum going. You know, I don't think they could compete against Bama or Auburn, but you know, I think I'm gonna stick with buying this team.
I'm just gonna look back they barely beat Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt is a bottom tier SEC, probably the lowest you can go in the SEC, and they beat them 17-12. And then they barely squeak out an overtime win against Florida, which I think Florida just had an off game that game.
A win is a win.
A win is a win, but I just can't. Jimbo Fisher's gotta have a winning record this year, and they gotta at least be a top 10 finish for me to even start considering them to be like a decent team in the SEC.
I mean, Jimbo Fisher's a national championship winning quarterback. I think he can help this team. He's definitely got, the coaching ability.
Yeah. All right. Well, moving on, and finally, Ben, are you buying or selling the hype around the Cincinnati Bearcats?
All right, I'm buying Cincinnati. I've been selling mostly, but I will buy Cincinnati. Now, everybody can go, hey, strength of schedule for Cincinnati probably isn't that great either, but they're playing in a tough American conference. Memphis is a tough team. UCF's always a tough team. SMU's ranked 15, and that's who they played today, another tough team. So, I mean, they're allowing 12.7 points per game. They're putting up points at 35.7 points per game. They're spreading the wealth. There's really no one man on this offense. It's a team effort every game for the Bearcats. And they beat Army, like I said, a tough Army team. And if they can beat SMU today, beat UCF and Memphis to close out their year, I think they're a top 10 team hands down. I mean, I like their ranking right now at number 9. I think it can stay. I'm really buying Cincinnati. They've been competitive in that American Conference for a good few years now. And I think they're just going to continue it.
I just don't think this is a top 10 team. I'm sorry.
Dang.
I just don't. I love the underdogs, but these guys, I just can't buy it. I am selling Cincinnati. I just don't think they're a top 10 team. They're in the American Conference, which is probably looked like the best, maybe the Sun Belt, non-Power 5 team. I think just like BYU, they're a ranked team, not a top 10 team, maybe a top 15 team. Again, like BYU, I think OU would beat this team, and I think they would beat them pretty handily. They have wins over teams Austin P and USF, and their biggest win is Army, which is really not saying much. They're 3-0 right now. A couple of their games have been postponed. I'm just not buying the hype.
Yeah, I'm with you. I am definitely selling them. I don't even see them as honestly top 10, maybe 20. I guess we'll see. But yeah, Cincy, I definitely just think the defense needs to close out games better to keep Desmond Ridder's his hot arm from wearing out. And I think better team ball handling is a must if they want to remain ranked, because turnovers, I think, will kill them in the course of the tougher games. Like you said, Army, not that great of a team. I think they're going to lose against SMU, honestly. But yeah, like I said, I'm definitely going to have to sell Cincy.
Yeah, I just think the rest of the year will be the calling. Like, it'll tell you how this team's going to be.
Right.
If you can beat UCF, which is a very good football program, if you can beat Memphis, that you just talked about, upset UCF, and if they can beat SMU, which is a top 20 team right now, I think you can make a case for Cincy. I'm not saying they're a college football playoff bound team. I'm not saying that.
Yeah,
because I don't think that's. I'd be surprised, but I definitely can see the hype around them just keep growing in that American Conference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, as we inch closer to kickoff time, the remote team is going to make their picks for who's the best player in a Sooner jersey. We'll be right back.
Shadow of the Palace on the Prairie here in Norman, Oklahoma, leading up to Oklahoma's matchup with TCU down at Ammon G. Carter Stadium in Fort Worth. Alongside Shannon Earhart and Caroline Grace, I am Parker Thune, back with you here to kick off Hour 2 on Game Day U this morning. Well, folks, Oklahoma's season is at a bit of a crossroads. 4 games in, long road stand ahead. It could go either way. Either you could see the Sooners kick things into gear, or things could fall apart. Now, I want to know, there are several players for the Sooners that are going to factor big into the next couple weeks as they face off with some really tough competition. TCU this week, and the real scrappy Texas Tech team, a Matt Wells team in Lubbock next week on Halloween night. So, as of right now, who is OU's best player, all things considered? Who is going to have to be the guy for Oklahoma over the next few weeks?
Seth McGowan. Seth McGowan is the guy 100%. I mean, you can't go wrong here with running backs. You do have TJ Pledger and Marcus Major, but Seth McGowan has proved his place, and it's clear that he's the most versatile and dynamic runner. He's reliable. It's not hard for him to find those holes and scurry his way through to the end zone. It's absurd. I'm a little at loss of words for it. Yes, he didn't play last weekend against Texas. We talked about how he had that concussion. But the way, when he's playing, the way that he breaks tackles and trips defenders up is so smooth. It's so smooth. It looks so good. He is the guy, and he's the guy that, in my opinion, doesn't really need an O-line. He can just make his own run game and jumpstart that himself. Seth McGowan is also now behind TJ Pledger with that 131 yards from Texas, the second leading rusher. Before he was the first. He's played one less game than every other running back. So Seth McGowan, 100% is OU's best player. Without him, we're not so good, and that was evident in Texas. There was a little bit of a lack of a production, so have to go with McGowan.
Yeah, based on your comments, I say the three of us start a campaign to get Seth McGowan officially nicknamed Scurry. What do you think?
Scurry.
Okay, I think I can roll with that.
He does. He scurries right through.
Yeah.
There's not a better word to describe him.
What do you think, Caroline?
I think I like your analysis about how he doesn't need an offensive line, because honestly, we kind of struggle on every other aspect except for one guy, and that's who I'm going to call out, because do we ever complain about the snaps or our center? The answer is no, because Creed Humphrey is OU's best player. Now, if there is one person that Spencer Rattler can rely on to do their job, it is number 56. Now, Rattler's not the best in pocket pressure, but from the looks of it, Creed does most of the work by himself, and he does it correctly. I think he's aggressive off the start. Sorry, that's kind of a track term, but I think he is. He balls out of his hand, and he's ready to work. And he's just a leader, plain and simple. Anyone would be lucky to have him on his team. On and off the field, he leads the Sooners, and I think everyone around him really needs to pick up what he's trying to put on the table for everyone. He's been very vocal throughout the season, and in order for Spencer Rattler to really be able to execute, it's going to take our offensive line stepping up and being like Creed Humphrey.
I also think he's a very trusting guy, for sure.
Yeah,
He's very trustworthy, and it's obvious that he's going to be able to complete his job. I wouldn't say he's the best player, but definitely one of the most experienced, if not.
Yeah, you'll notice Spencer kind of likes to move wherever Creed's going. If Creed's blocking this guy, Spencer's right behind him. If he's blocking over here, Spencer's right behind him over here. So I think that says a lot.
I tell you what, if you're a member of any college football fan base out there and you have qualms with the snaps from your team, my condolences to you. I'm sure there is a support group for you out there somewhere. But no, the best player for Oklahoma, in my humble opinion, is a guy that you haven't seen on the field yet in 2020. That is Ronnie Perkins. And we hope, we don't know for certain, but we hope that he'll be returning to the field today against TCU. Obviously, there's plenty of nuance and gray area with that suspension stemming from the positive drug test before the Peach Bowl last year. But if and when Ronnie Perkins is back on the field for the Sooners, he's going to be a difference maker on the defensive line. He is the most talented defensive player that the Sooners have, and as I posited, the most talented player that they have overall. And he's a guy that can get after the quarterback, he can stuff the run, he's versatile, he can move all over the field. He is a defensive lineman with the mobility of a linebacker and the strength of a defensive tackle. And that's the kind of guy that Oklahoma has been missing. And the other thing that I don't think people acknowledge as much about Ronnie Perkins is he's also the emotional leader that the Sooners seem to have been missing over the first few weeks of the season. Who's going to be the guy? Who's going to be the guy that rallies Oklahoma with a competitive fire on the sidelines? It was Kenneth Murray for the longest time. It was Baker Mayfield before that. Who's that guy for Oklahoma this year? To me, it's Ronnie Perkins, and the reason why you haven't seen that fire on the sideline from the Sooners is because Ronnie Perkins hasn't been there.
I hope y'all been keeping up with his game tweets. He's tweeting like play-by-plays of like what's happening. He calls people out. I'm here for it. I love that. I think you're absolutely right. I think the outcome of K-State and Iowa State would have been a lot different if he had been in the game.
Especially when you acknowledge that one of Oklahoma's primary shortcomings in both of those games was their inability to get after the quarterback.
Exactly, and I've expressed that K-State's run game is what puts them on top, and I think Ronnie Perkins would have been able to at least slow it down. Maybe not shut it down, but slow it down.
Ronnie Perkins, I have to interrupt you, but Ronnie Perkins produces. He produces turnovers, and we saw that last year and years previous. I haven't seen that emotional aspect as much as you have, and I don't think I can say that he's OU's best player right now, but I'm sure that when he gets in the game and he gets the chance, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, that we'll be able to really see him and see what he can bring to the table. I think the defense will take a 180.
6 sacks in 2019, second on the team behind only Jalen Redmond, who of course opted out prior to this season. All right, switching gears, defense back to offense. Who is Spencer Rattler's best target in the passing game? We have seen him spread the ball around quite a bit over the first 4 weeks of the season. Several guys getting involved that we didn't anticipate would have as large of a role as they have thus far. You look at Jeremiah Hall and Marvin Mims, top of that list. So, all things considered, who do you believe is the go-to guy for Spencer Rattler in the passing game, Shannon?
Well, I can't go new where we do have Marvin Mims and Jeremiah Hall are pretty good. They've really showed out. Charleston Rambo. Consistent. He's always been there. Ball out Charlie is a big play guy. He's so fast and he's always on his toes. There's no second guessing for him at all. He has veteran experience. He coaches those younger receivers like Mims. So I think that Charleston Rambo really is Rattler's best target. Not only that, but he's great on the deep ball. He really stretches the field, and it seems to me that he's one of the only players that really is willing to take off and see the big picture. We see those screen passes, and he's great after the catch. He's able to just weave in and out of players and as well stretch the field. He's a dual threat. We can count on him, and that does come with experience, yes. I understand that. But that experience that he learned from his prior years has really gotten him to the place that he is today, and I think that Rattler's just able to trust Charleston on a high level. Other than Marvin Mims, I understand. Maybe they have that kind of freshman-sophomore connection, but I do think that ball-out Charlie is Rattler's best target.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I'm kind of disappointed in his play this season.
I'm not disappointed at
He's
all.
like our third receiver, our third leading receiver.
But numbers don't matter. He's still there for the production.
You're right, numbers
think
definitely
so.
don't matter.
He's completely unreliable, actually. I don't think he's played up to par whatsoever this season.
I think he has hands down.
Maybe that's the play calling.
He's competing against two other phenomenal receivers. It's a competition between all three of them. It just depends on how tight the coverage is. The coverage is probably tighter on Rambo because he has more experience than Marvin Mims.
Yeah, but Marvin Mims has really been putting guys in the ground lately.
I hope that's your best target pick.
I know. I'm not even going to go with a receiver for this one. I'm going with Austin Stogner.
Yeah.
Get the ball to Stog. I honestly think I could have picked this guy for just about every segment that we've done on this show. And he's big. He's aggressive. I'm here for it. He's OU's leading receiver in any given time against any defender in any moment. He is reliable. For the sole reason of being reliable, he is the best target. But on top of that, he's racking up huge yardages. It's the best of both worlds. Oh, and when he's not receiving, guess what he's doing? Blocking. I think this guy is an absolute firecracker. He's dynamic. He's down the field when we need him down the field. He's blocking when we need him to block. There's nothing that I don't rely on him to do right and efficiently.
He's a good player. That's a good pick. I'll give it to you.
He's a big-time player in big-time moments.
Parker, what do you got?
I tell you what, no player has been a more pleasant surprise for Oklahoma this year than Marvin Mims.
Yeah,
I think that goes without
saying.
And the guy, as a true freshman, is already flashing some serious NFL potential.
Oh, for sure.
I think this guy has more ability than any other receiver in the Oklahoma attack to simply get open. Marvin Mims finds a way to get open, and he's got excellent hands. We saw that in the Texas game. He made a couple of very tough catches. I remember one ball in particular down close to the goal line that Tanner Mordecai fired behind him. He had to reach down and reach behind his body to catch the ball, and did so. And Marvin Mims, to my knowledge, if my research is correct, does not have a dropped pass yet as a Sooner. So not only is he a consistent target, he's a reliable target. He's a guy that you know if you put the ball in the right place, he's going to go and get it. 4 touchdowns, tied for the team lead. And all things considered, I believe what Marvin Mims has contributed to the Oklahoma offense as a true freshman is as critical as any contribution that they've gotten on the offensive side of the football. He has been a revelation, and it's been badly needed when you consider that Oklahoma is trying to replace CeeDee Lamb, Jaden Hazelwood has been out with the injury, and Trajan Bridges has been suspended. They've needed Marvin Mims to step up. They needed somebody to be the guy opposite Charleston Rambo, and with Obi Obialo missing 3 of the first 4 games of the season due to COVID-19 protocol, that fell to Marvin Mims. And not only did he own the opportunity, but he lived up to the billing that he came in with as a record-setting prep receiver on the Texas high school circuit. The guy had almost 2,500 receiving yards as a senior in high school, but the measurables weren't outstanding. A lot of people didn't believe he could be an immediate contributor in a Power 5 offense. He's very much proved the doubters wrong.
He's definitely come to play. He's come out hot and he's steady. I agree with that 100%. I might have to take your take over mine, but I do still stand by Rambo. But yes, I'm proud of Mims for coming in clutch, especially in those big moments when we really needed him. So, good take.
I think your take is valid in the sense of he should be a target. He should be Spencer Rattler's right-hand man, and I think it might have a lot to do with the play calling, but I just haven't seen enough out of Rambo that should be comparing to Marvin Mims.
All right, we're kicking it down to Caroline's neck of the woods coming up on Game Day U. Abby Bennett and the Game Day U studio crew will discuss if there's anybody that can challenge the Alabama Crimson Tide in the SEC. Stay with us.
Welcome back to Game Day U. One of the things we here at the show wanted to do this year was highlight some high school football. Now, with that being said, let's shine the spotlight on some of Oklahoma's younger stars. First, we'll touch on the Piedmont Bishop McGuinness game. On paper, this matchup looked pretty even, but the Fighting Irish made it look like a cakewalk by the final whistle. Now, despite Piedmont running back Joey Mars' 112 yards and 2 TDs on just 11 carries, McGuinness took home the win 33-14. In a 6A football, the 2018 state championship, Broken Arrow Tigers fell to Edmond Santa Fe in a thrilling 35-28 finish. The Wolves were led by Ethan Heitch, who had 32 carries for a 162 yards and a touchdown. Now, in other Edmond Santa Fe news, junior 4-star and OU recruit Talon Shetron will announce his commitment today. Now, let's get into a little SEC discussion for a minute. First, we always hear about these stout, hard-nosed defenses in the SEC, but this year they've looked like a shell of what they once were. What's the reason behind the Big 12 numbers coming out of the Southern Eastern Conference? Ben, we'll start with you.
I think it just comes down to conditioning. And the SEC defenses, like you mentioned, are known for being really tough. And I think just a couple games into this year with the pandemic going on, teams just aren't the same. And to me, it comes down just to the conditioning aspect. They didn't have spring ball. They didn't have summer ball. They had no chance to really bulk, get in the weight room. And another thing, they didn't really get a chance to run through schemes, learn how to play the defensive style that their defensive coordinator wants. And ultimately, that's a difference maker. If you are just kind of going into games each week, learning something new each and every week, it's just not going to pan out. And they didn't have, like I mentioned, with the no spring ball, the no summer ball, teams are running out of gas late in the game, and that's going to be a difference maker. You need to close out games in the SEC and in any conference. And if you are running out of gas, you're not going to win football games.
Yeah, with going off the Big 12 thing, I think that's what it is. It's Big 12 numbers, but it's the offense. I don't think there's anything wrong with the defense. I just think the SEC has great offense. You know, they're all well-rounded. You know, they can run and pass the ball effectively. Bama has the best wide receiver core in the nation. Mac Jones is a good quarterback. Najee Harris is a top 2 running back, and you can make the argument that he's the best running back in the country. Kyle Trask has looked fantastic with the Florida Gators. Mike Leach's air raid, even though it hasn't really produced since week 1 LSU, is still there. The air raid is still there, and it's hard to counter. And Lane Kiffin is a good offensive coach. He was great with Bama. He was great with FAU, and I think he's going to be even better with Ole Miss.
All right. Ben, now going back to what you said about little training, I really like what you said because with that little training, that also affects the coaches because they obviously can't go to the training and have anything to coach. And also the SEC got 4 new coaches and over a dozen new coordinators. So Ben, yeah, going off of your point, this really affected the coaches, and I think they had to make the decision fast and really get good at the easiest areas of improvement to really, just improve, which I don't really think was the defense. And Saul, again, like you said, the offense is really dominant in the SEC. But yeah, all these new coaches and coordinators really affects, honestly, every team's style of play. And yeah, the SEC is really different. So
yeah, we're halfway through the year, and it's going to come back down to normal. I think SEC defenses, once they get 9 games in, they're going to be back to normal. We just got to wait for it. It's just the pandemic's been a little crazy.
Yeah, they just had to get the rhythm, and I think they got it.
Yeah. And atop the conference mountain right now sits Alabama. Can any team in the SEC slow down the Crimson Tide, Ben?
No, not at all. I'm rolling with the Tide, and I will roll with the Tide. I mean, we saw what they can do against tough SEC teams like a Georgia, like an A&M. They were dominant. They have an offense that can just put up points, like Saul mentioned, a top wide receiver core, Mac Jones, Najee Harris. The list goes on and on. And the defense, I cannot talk enough about defense, even though we just commented that they've had some slip-ups. The Alabama defense is top-notch. Jordan Battle, Christian Harris, Patrick Surtain, LeBryant Ray. They have playmakers all over the field, from secondary linebackers, linemen, everywhere. And running that defense is Dylan Moses, an All-American as a sophomore. 37 total tackles, 1.5 sacks, all over the field. Kind of your Kenneth Murray, if you're an OU fan who want to relate to somebody. He's like comparison. That. Great comparison. He might even be better. But that defense is really good, and that Bama team, they're just running over everybody right now. Nick Saban is a god when it comes to coaching, and I think Bama will only just keep going and keep getting better each and every single week.
Yeah, I'm going with you on that. There's not a single team in the SEC that can stop. There's not a single team in the SEC that can stop Alabama. They just look dominant. They're a well-rounded team. They can run it. They can pass it. They've got a great defense. They absolutely wrecked Georgia. And that was the number 3 team in the country, and they made them look terrible. They can throw the ball. They can run the ball. Najee Harris, like I said earlier, top 2, you can argue 1, running back in the country. But let's talk about their receiver core. Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, John Mechie III, dominant. They all look good. Mac Jones is a good quarterback. Not a great quarterback, but do you really need to be a great quarterback when you have these weapons? No. He's a good running back, and I think that's a good thing. And I think in the SEC, no team is going to stop him.
He also has a top 5 offensive line in the nation.
Oh,
that also helps out too.
O-line never gets enough
offense
credit.
has everything.
Okay. Well, I'm going to have to disagree with y'all because there has to be that one team that's going to compete with Bama, and I think that is Auburn. Now, Auburn, I think, is the only team that could put up points against Bama. Like y'all said, Bama, I do think, is a great team. They're a powerhouse, but I mean, we've seen them compete like they won in the Iron Bowl last year. Yeah, they got some different players, maybe change up their style of play a little bit. But like I said, I think Auburn is definitely gonna compete. I think that Bo Nix, after their loss, they're gonna really have to prep to be able to compete against Bama. And with Mark Anthony Richards, with his speed, I think that could provide or could be necessary to earn big yardage that was lacking last season. But yeah, I think the SEC always looks forward to this game, and I think that Auburn will be able to compete.
So you think Bo Nix, your 0, is going to beat Alabama in the Auburn Bowl?
Yeah, I was going to say.
0 to hero?
Okay, I know what y'all are thinking. I know. I think that was a little warm-up, and I think that he will be able to compete. I think he'll really know or honestly admit to his mistakes, really prep, and I think they'll put up points against Bama.
I mean, he is the difference maker in that Iron Bowl.
He is.
Because you know Mac Jones in that offense is going to ball out, but it's
he won it last year.
It's whether Bo Nix and that offense can show up, and they really haven't this year. They've been really inconsistent. So I don't know if they're the team to beat when it comes to Bama.
I don't think there's any other team that could compete.
The only other team I could think of besides your Clemson and your Ohio States outside of the SEC, if you're staying within the SEC, it's Florida. Or whoever comes out of that other conference. I know, but whoever comes out of that other conference is it's either gonna be Georgia or it's either gonna be Florida. coming out of the SEC East. And those are the only two that can even give Bama a game, I think. I think Florida, yes, they lost to A&M. Like I said, I think it was just an overtime shootout, and sometimes your defense just can't get a stop. But, I mean, that Florida team is still really good down in Gainesville.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think if Georgia, what we saw against Georgia, I mean, it's probably going to be the same with Florida, but at least anything can happen.
Yeah.
All right, well, I guess we'll just have to see. When Game Day U comes back, we'll send it to the remote team for call-outs, final words, and score predictions.
Back to wrap things up here on Game Day U from just outside Oklahoma Memorial Stadium. Gaylord family, Oklahoma Memorial Stadium, I suppose, if you really want to be technical. Owen Field.
Well, we're in Gaylord Hall. You got to throw the plug out there.
There you go. Gaylord everywhere. Gaylord branded. Parker Thune alongside Shannon Earhart and Caroline Grace. All right, we've spent an hour and a half touching on every other storyline across college football. Let's recenter ourselves and bring it back to the contest that, for all intents and purposes, is the most important to our day-to-day lives as University of Oklahoma students.
OU TCU?
Oklahoma versus TCU, kicking off in just a little bit over an hour at Ammon G. Carter Stadium in Fort Worth. Shannon, what do you expect from TCU in this game? What do they bring to the table?
It's more of what they don't bring to the table. Here, during this game, TCU's offense will not show up. And that's been proved time and time again. It's seen that their defense is giving up more points than their offense is actually producing. Max Duggan, he's the only one showing up. The offense is absolutely missing. They just look lost. They won't be able to keep up with Rattler and his offense. It's just uncomparable there. But let me remind you that Max Duggan leads the team on the ground as a quarterback with 132 yards. He's the quarterback and leads the team in rushing yards. What this team needs to do is become more vertical and utilize Quentin Johnston down the field. And if they do, it'll be dangerous. But if they don't, the offense is just not going to be there. They need to utilize their wide receivers and their running backs. So I'd be shocked if their running backs, Kendry Miller, whatever his name is, if he is utilized more in the run game, that's going to be huge. I think that TCU will be able to make an impact there. But overall, their offense will not show up. I can guarantee that.
Yeah, pretty accurate take, I would
Thank
say.
you. Thank you.
Yeah.
There's so much evidence.
Yes, even our defense, I think, OU's defense will be able to stop them pretty heavily. But I'm going to say that TCU is going to create a lot of pocket pressure. That is something that any team in the country has watched OU the last 4 games and realized Spencer Rattler cannot produce when he has an abundance amount of pressure on him. So I think that they're really going to step up their linebacker unit and their defensive front, and they're going to get that pressure to inside the quarterback. He's not going to be able to move anywhere, and once you shut down him, you can't get Stogner out in the open, and you can't get TJ Pledger or Seth McGowan out. Our offense is done. So I think that they've really taken notes from the last 3 games, and that's what they're going to do. They're going to put pressure where the run game is and where the fast action, high-tempo offense is, and they're going to shut it down.
What they have to do is really, you kind of backed up my point, is that the defense is producing more than the offense. So,
Right.
yeah, I'd say that they do put a lot of pressure on Rattler, and I agree that if he has pressure, he panics. He doesn't know yet.
I tell you what, Shannon, you talked all about what TCU can't do on offense. Let me tell you what they can do.
All right.
They can spread the wealth. This is not a team that's reliant on a single player for their offensive production. Max Duggan has plenty of weapons, both in the ground game and the passing game, to distribute the ball to. You look in the backfield with Amari DiMercato as well as Darwin Barlow. Look in the passing game, the tight ends, Artavius Lynn, Pro Wells. Pro Wells coming off a second-team All-Big 12 nomination last season. And then the wide receivers, Quentin Johnston, you mentioned, one of the most talented true freshmen in all of college football, as well as the Nebraska transfer, J.D. Spielman, 3-time All-Big 10 selection with the Huskers. That's a guy that can play some ball. So, I tell you what, Oklahoma can't take anything for granted, especially in the secondary, against this TCU offensive attack. All right, specific matchup to watch. Shannon, what do you got?
Speaking of the secondary, the matchup that I am excited to watch and you need to watch is the OU secondary versus the TCU wide receivers. After scoring only 14 points versus Kansas State last week, TCU is going to come out with lots of energy. Quentin Johnston, again, now his 3rd time that his name has been thrown out. and Blair Conright are going to be tough to cover. So what OU has to do is not make penalties. There's no room for mistakes from the secondary. We're looking for tight coverage here from Woody Washington, Pat Fields, Delarian Turner-Yell. All of them, all of our secondary needs to be on their toes and ready to go because a defensive stop could be the key to winning the game. So let's not make penalties, and I'm excited to see how OU secondary is going to match up against TCU wide receivers.
Yeah, I think we're all kind of going off of what we said we're going to expect from TCU and just kind of throwing in there like what we think we're going to see from OU as well. So with that being said, I'm going with the linebackers versus the running backs. I think that OU has really stepped up with their running backs unit. I think Lincoln Riley has discovered kind of this tool, the secret tool in his toolbox that's really making things click. And TCU has been keeping opponents in pretty low scores compared to the norm. K-State had their lowest score against TCU. So I think that the Horned Frogs are going to use guys like Garrett Wallow and D. Winter and really push it up the D-line, and they're going to be able to attack our run game. And I'm excited to see how our running backs are going to produce in an environment where they're not being able to run anywhere or go anywhere. Really want to see how they're going to get out of that line of scrimmage.
What they need to do here is anticipate the competition.
Right.
Because if they don't anticipate the competition and the tough plays, they're not going to perform.
Here's what else OU needs to anticipate. They need to anticipate that Max Duggan is going to try to get outside the pocket, tuck the ball, and run on him, because one thing that the Sooners have struggled to do historically is defend mobile quarterbacks, and that's why I think the crucial matchup in this game today is between Max Duggan and the position that Alex Grinch termed the mug, which Nick Bedino was utilized in that role against Sam Ehlinger in Texas. But basically it's a hybrid rush and spy kind of a role in which you have one guy specifically designated to keep a real high pressure tab on the quarterback. And that's what Benito did against Ehlinger in that game against Texas. And if Ronnie Perkins plays against TCU, maybe that's him, but one way or another, you need to have a guy that can drop back to spy on Duggan as well as get after him, get containment, and make sure he doesn't get outside the pocket. So that's going to be crucial for the Sooners in this game today because Max Duggan can bring it. He can play the quarterback position, and there's a reason why he was in that position as a true freshman for the Horned Frogs last year. It's because they believe in him, and he's only going to take more and more steps in the direction of being an elite quarterback.
He's not afraid of the pressure at all. He's ready and he's always on his toes. And I keep using that phrase, but it's true that he's just ready and in the moment every time he plays, even as a freshman. Even as an 18-year-old, he was ready to do it. So I expect that as well.
Yeah, I'm unaware of the status of Ronnie Perkins. Is he supposed to play?
He may play, he may not. We're not sure. Lincoln Riley has kept real tight lips about that situation.
Well, imagine showing up and Ronnie Perkins being able to play and you had no idea. So pretty smart decision.
Could be fun for Max Duggan.
Sneaky.
All right, call-outs for today's game. Shannon.
All right, have to go with Gabe Brkic. Yes, he missed that third quarter field goal against Texas. That was crucial. But hey, buddy, the past is the past. So shake it off and rally. I need to see you rally. It's only your second miss in 22 tries. So Gabe Brkic, go back to the basics on each kick. Reevaluate what you're gonna do to make that field goal, and don't be scared. Doesn't matter, past is past, can't change it. So, Gabe, love to see it.
Hey, he's my neighbor. Should I give him some inspiration? Should I tell him how we all feel?
100%. Tell him to rally.
I've never said one word to him, but I'm going with Woody Washington. I see determination and grit within him. I'm calling him out because I know there's so much more left in the tank for him. He was the playmaker in OU's cry for help at the Red River Showdown. His body language showed maturity. That's something we don't see a lot in true freshmen, and that's why they're taken off the field. I think he needs to learn and fail early in his career so he could really be a weapon. I think Alex Grinch could utilize him in a very, very mature way if they just play their cards right. Now, the mediocrity in the secondary is just laughable at this point. I think we can all agree with that. I think Texas may have just been a one-hit wonder. Do I think they're going to improve? Yes. Do I think they're going to improve enough to make a statement? No. It's going to take someone young to step up and rework the system, someone that only knows Alex Grinch's system. And you know what? Bookie, look out, because he's got about 5 inches on you and a whole lot more smart plays. So I'm calling out Woody Washington.
That's a good take.
I'm calling out a guy that you haven't seen on the field yet in 2020. No, not Ronnie Perkins. I'm talking about Chris Murray, the transfer offensive guard from UCLA. I tell you what, this guy comes to the Sooners in the offseason after 24 starts in 2 years with the Bruins. He got the unenviable task of blocking Neville Gallimore and Ronnie Perkins when Oklahoma visited the Rose Bowl last year and didn't do half bad. He's a guy that, in terms of his long-term potential, is probably second only to Creed Humphrey in terms of his ability to play at the next level, potentially. And so he's been dealing with an injury as well. We don't know how much he's going to play today. Lincoln Riley has said he will be active, he will be available. But I tell you what, if Tyrese Robinson and Marquise Hayes don't step their game up, Chris Murray's right there behind him. He's got experience, and he's able to step in and fill the void if one of them starts to slack. All right, final words. Shannon, what do you got?
My final word is going to be momentum. And that's an easy word to understand. All the Sooners have to do is keep their momentum up. They need to keep it going and never slow down. All they have to do is keep ramping up, but also don't anticipate that you're going to be up like 10-0 and then just fall short and let it go. So no letdown, keep the momentum up.
All right, I like that word. My word is execute. Now, the week prior to this, I chose initiate. That was step one, find your job. Now, it's do your job. It's that so what, now what mentality. We've got to execute our jobs. You know what it is. When the ball snaps, find your job and execute it. Stay tuned for part 3 next week, because I'm going to continue on this trend until our offense and defense is clicking on all cylinders.
Love a solid trilogy. My final word for today is innocuous. Innocuous.
What does that mean?
For those of you that don't know the word, innocuous is defined as not offensive or harmful. And as I look back at how Oklahoma lost to Iowa State and Kansas State, the Wildcats didn't beat the Sooners. The Cyclones didn't beat the Sooners. The Sooners beat themselves in both of those games. The one thing that Oklahoma cannot do in this game against TCU is get in their own way. They don't need to play spectacular football. They just need to play fundamentally sound football for 60 minutes. Consistent football for 60 minutes. They can't afford to have another lapse like they did in the final 3 minutes against Texas, in which they gave up 14 unanswered points and choked away that double-digit lead. So they need to play innocuously.
So the phrase you're looking for is don't be stupid.
Yes, actually, that's a very good way. Maybe a little too abrasive, but a very good way of putting it.
In case no one picked up on that, I'm helping you out.
All right, final prediction, score prediction for this game, Shannon.
My score prediction is 54-27 OU. Yes, I know it's a high-scoring game, and you both know that I'm not good at predictions, but I think that OU is really going to come out with a lot of momentum. I said that before, but they're coming off a hot win against Texas. They've had reps. They had a bye week. They've been ready to go. So I think they're going to be consistent, and I think that OU is just going to sweep 54-27.
Yeah, I don't think OU is going to be consistent at all. I'm going 38-30 TCU. And the reason I say this is because TCU's had 3 weeks prior to look at OU and shut down what's working for them. It only clicked at Texas. So if they can just do what Iowa State and K-State did, then they're going to click and they're going to beat Oklahoma.
Close game.
Shannon? Yeah. I'm going to vote you down. I'm going with the Horned Frogs as well. I like TCU in this contest. Oh, wow, that was a complete
That was bad.
Sorry.
I like TCU 31-27. I think we don't give Gary Patterson's defenses enough credit. Gary Patterson is one of the best defensive coaches in this country. And I tell you what, he can bring stuff to the table with that 4-2-5 defensive scheme to curtail Spencer Rattler's impact. And I think Max Duggan does just enough to lift TCU to victory. I think Oklahoma's propensity to give up the big play, especially in the late stages, is going to burn them. And I look at J.D. Spielman as the potential game breaker for the Horned Frogs. But I tell you what,
I got to counter that.
2 votes for TCU.
Hey,
I got to counter that. I got to counter that.
You do whatever you want on our next show. You brag. You have bragging rights till the end of the
Lincoln Riley
year.
is going to come in with some creative plays, hopefully some trick plays, maybe to fool, you said, they've been watching video, maybe to fool the TCU defense. I think it's going to be a large win for OU.
All right, well, Sooner Nation certainly hopes Shannon is more on track with her prediction than either Caroline or I. But one way or another, that is going to do it.
It's better to be right than to be liked.
I suppose that's fair. Being right, being liked, I guess I'll take being right. But one way or another, that's going to do it for us this morning on Game Day. You, Abby Bennett, and the studio crew will be back to wrap you up in just a moment.
Welcome back to Game Day U. We have a little bit of time left, so let's wrap up the show with our picks for Week 8 of college football. First off, Ben, which game should the people at home have on their TV screen today?
Well, my game was actually last night, and it was Wisconsin against University of Illinois. Now, you would think that's not a big game, but Illinois was a heavy underdog and upset Wisconsin last year. Did they do the same? No. Wisconsin got the revenge big time, but it was definitely worthy of a game to watch because, I mean, you never know with these first week of Big Ten games.
Yeah, I like that. You know, I watched it last night, so it's definitely a game to watch. Mine is Oklahoma State, Iowa State. Number 1 team in the Big 12 on the line, and Chuba Hubbard and Tylan Wallace look like they are the top running back receiver duo in the country, maybe number 2 behind Jalen Waddle and Najee Harris. We don't know yet. And I think Iowa State is at the point where they're good enough to say that OU's loss to them may not have been a fluke. I think Iowa State's a legit team, and I don't think it's anything we should beat ourselves up about. So that's my game of the week.
All right, those are some good games, but I'm going with Bama and Tennessee. I mean, everyone always is watching Bama, but I think Tennessee may be able to compete and put up some numbers. Now, they did lose against Kentucky and Georgia, but with that being said, I think they could put up some points. I mean, Tennessee's offensive line was projected as one of the best earlier this year, and like we talked about earlier, the SEC defense is a little shaky, so I think it'll be a good game. Now, all right, with all that said, let's break down some marquee matchups from the American Conference. SMU or Cincinnati? Who you got?
I got to roll with the Bearcats. I was buying them earlier. I'm buying them now. The Cincinnati Bearcats will beat SMU today. Great game. Great matchup, though, 9-15. But I think Bearcats will beat the SMU Mustangs.
I got to disagree with you on that one. I'm saying pony up. Go Mustangs. SMU. That's my pick to win. Brother Garrett Riley, Lincoln's brother, that is going to take control of that offense and lead them to a great victory. I think it's going to be a shootout. I don't think Cincinnati's proven yet. I kind of said that earlier when I was selling them, and I'm selling them here. I got SMU with the win. Ben,
I think this is the first time we're agreeing out of the entirety of the show, but I'm going with SMU. Wait. Anyways, if they beat, yes, got y'all confused. Just kidding. If Cincinnati wins, I think, I don't think they will, but I mean, they're 3-0. I think they also dealt with COVID postponements, which kind of probably got them off their game, but I'm going with you, pony up.
Pony up.
No, Bearcats all the way.
The Big Ten finally makes its return today in one of the biggest matchups, Michigan and Minnesota. Ben?
I'm rolling with the Golden Gophers, man. Minnesota, they've been on the rise. They got a really good head coach, really good football program there. And, I mean, I'm not a big fan of Michigan. I think Jim Harbaugh is not a good football coach, and he has not done anything at Michigan. So I think that continues this year.
I am a huge fan of Minnesota and the Golden Gophers and PJ Fleck. So it kills me to say this, but I have Michigan winning this.
No.
Harbaugh shows up in somewhat big games. This is a somewhat big games. Harbaugh will lose you about 3 or 4. Not win. He'll lose you about 3 or 4 games a year.
And every game against Ohio State.
Every game against Ohio State.
Okay.
Ohio State's guaranteed, and I think this is a loss too.
Now, Ben, this is the first time that I'm agreeing with
there
you.
We go.
I have the Minnesota Golden Gophers. I think Tanner Morgan is one of, if not the best QBs out of the Big Ten. I think they have a great offense. They've steadily improved under PJ Fleck. But yeah, I have the Golden Gophers, and I think this game will really set out their season. Now, taking it out to the Tar Heel State, North Carolina, and the NC State Wolfpack. Should we call it the Wolfpack State this year, or will UNC take the win?
I'm liking the Tar Heels. I mean, I might be jumping on the bandwagon here. The Tar Heels have looked really good. Sam Howell has been very impressive so far this year. And if he's passing the ball and that offense is working like it usually does, Mac Brown and the boys are going to, I think they have a really good chance of really blowing out NC State here today.
Oh, I'm 100% with you on that. If we're talking about fluke losses, let's talk about North Carolina to Florida State. I think that was a fluke loss. I think this is a huge, huge bounce back game for Sam Howell, and I think that he'll rise again and UNC will get the win.
So I'm disagreeing with both of y'all. I'm actually going with UNC. I mean, the NC State quarterback Devin Leary is out with a broken leg, so that maybe, I don't know, we'll see. But yeah, I think I'm going with UNC. I think they've kind of been on the come up.
Yeah, they're definitely on the come up and in a kind of mediocre ACC with Clemson mainly running the show. I think them, Miami, Notre Dame now in there this year, I think they're all going to be able to give Clemson a run for their money. I'm really excited for the UNC-Clemson game later on.
It's going to be
Yeah,
fantastic.
that'll be a good game.
Yes, but UNC's
So
got to
good.
keep it up this year. And
definitely.
Starting with the game against NC State today, they got to just keep piling up those wins because they almost beat Clemson last year. So
Yeah, this is
they're a
the
good
Sam-
team.
Oh, go ahead.
No, they're a good team. That was my
Yeah,
point.
this is the Sam Howell proving game. You know, he coming off a loss, he had all the hype, didn't really live up to it. Florida State. This is when we see how good Sam Howell really is.
Yeah, I agree. And finally, down in Fort Worth, Texas, OU and TCU at 11 a.m. Ben, do you have the Sooners or the Horned Frogs?
Tough, but I got to ride with the Sooners. I mean, they're coming off a huge 4 overtime game against Texas. I was there. It was insane. And I'm hoping they keep riding that high. They had that bye week to rest up, kind of control their emotions a little bit. But OU is really good coming off of bye weeks, and I think they continue that today against a tough TCU team. They will give them a game. Max Duggan is, I think, legit as a Big 12 quarterback. I think it'll be a really tough game, but you can't go against OU. Come on.
I actually can, and I will. I do think TCU is a tough team. You know, their way of getting here is almost identical to the way of how we got here. Our one win, Texas. TCU's one win, Texas. TCU's 2 losses, Iowa State and K-State. Our 2 losses, Iowa State and K-State. I'm rolling with the Horned Frogs. I think it's going to be very close because I think we're just 2 similar teams. And I have TCU by field goal. Very close.
Fake fan. I'm also going with the Sooners, Ben. I think that, TCU can be an upset team. We'll see. But I definitely think that OU will be able to come back after that insane win against Texas. 4 overtimes. I think that Spencer Rattler, he saw after getting benched, I think that he will be able to, use that, pick up the game. I think
Spencer Rattler, after getting benched, we saw a whole different animal.
Oh,
Spencer Rattler,
yeah.
when he came back from getting benched, is the Spencer Rattler we all expected to see, but not the one we've been getting.
Yeah, I know. We need to see that today. I
Yeah.
think that'll be the big thing. Another thing, OU's had an awful time closing out games. We even saw it against Texas, but they were able to
Right.
finally get that win. But they need to play a full 60-minute game, 4-quarter game, and that's that will be the difference maker because TCU can put up points. They will stop you. They have a solid defense. I think the big thing will be, can OU capitalize on scoring opportunities and then finish strong?
And
I
the
think it will be a
thing-
difference maker.
And the thing is, with closing out games, you're playing a Gary Patterson-led TCU team.
Yeah.
Gary Patterson, if you give him any chance to come back, where if OU gets another big lead and takes their foot off the gas, Gary Patterson will make you pay.
Yeah. No, definitely a good coach. But, also Lincoln Riley. Come on. That's our head coach. Great coach. I think, like I said, him and Spencer definitely saw the mistakes that were made in the Texas game. Insane game, 4 overtimes. But TCU, they're also coming off of a loss. So, I don't know.
But I'm excited to watch the young secondary that OU displayed against Texas. Woody
Oh, yeah.
Washington,
Yeah.
Jaden Davis. They
Jaden
look
Davis.
fantastic.
They were balling out there against. Texas receivers are pretty good.
Yeah.
So if they're balling out there, it's exciting to know that we have that kind of future coming up. And Woody Washington, that's my pick for a big defensive player today because I think he's going to ball out.
Yeah.
I love it.
Good points, y'all. And lastly, before we sign off, let's talk upset picks. Which underdog gets the win today?
Back to your game that you said game to watch. I got Iowa State over OSU, Oklahoma State. I think that OSU, it's time for them to get their first loss of the year. And that hopefully will help OU's chances at a Big 12 championship.
I'll disagree with you on that. Personally, I got OSU winning that. I got them winning it 38-35. I think it's going to be close. Both teams did not look good week 1, but since then they've looked fine, and I think they look like a good team. My game of the week, we're going no Puka, no problem. Kansas Jayhawks over K-State.
Bold pick.
Yeah,
Kansas,
very, very bold.
Really not a good football program, but K-State's
Ooh.
looked good. But K-State does have Skylar Thompson out. So anything can happen.
I
It's
think that-
2020. Anything can happen.
I think
Oh, yeah.
Skylar Thompson out's going to be the difference maker.
Yeah.
I really think Kansas can pull one up on this huge upset.
Oh, yeah. No, definitely. Well, my upset, I'm going with the Baylor Bears over Texas. Now, like I said, Texas coming off that tough loss from OU, but Baylor, they've also dealt with COVID postponement. So, they haven't really been given a lot of time to prepare for this game because Texas is one of the biggest competitors, I personally think, in the Big 12. But, Baylor has 7 returning starters, including QB Charlie Brewer. Yeah, I think it'll be a great game, and the Bears will upset the Longhorns.
Speaking of QBs, why don't we take a look and say, was Tom Herman's choice to pick Sam Ehlinger over Shane Buechele a good one or a bad one?
I definitely think it was a good one. I mean, we've
Sam
seen
Ehlinger has balled out at Texas.
Oh,
he
yeah.
He is Texas football.
I just don't. I don't think so. He is the storyline, and he may be a better football player, but I think Shane Buechele is a better quarterback, and I think you should have a good quarterback at the quarterback position.
I get your point, but I think Sam Ehlinger has done more than enough at Texas. I mean, he hasn't been able to really beat OU. I don't know if Shane Buechele would have been able to beat OU.
Yeah.
But to say that it was a better choice, I mean, we can't really tell. But I think Sam Ehlinger was probably the safest choice that he could have taken.
Safe.
Yeah.
Good word.
No, I like the storyline. I do like the storyline. Diehard Longhorn. Was born holding the horns up. It's
true. It's a good storyline. I think against Baylor today, I like the upset pick. I think Charlie Brewer is a really good, probably a top 3 Big 12 quarterback.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But I think with Matt Rule being gone, Baylor just kind of hasn't looked the same. I mean, I don't think any team would look the same after losing your head coach. But I think they have a good system in place. They're a good team. They're not a team that you can just brush off on your schedule.
Definitely,
So
yeah.
I definitely think Texas coming off that loss to OU, they needed that bye week as well. But I think Baylor will make this much closer than